Death has a unique allure, a mesmerizing paradox of finality and mystery. Most recoil from it, viewing it as an unwelcome intruder that steals away loved ones and lays waste to dreams. But to me, it's always been different. As the head mortician at St. Andrew's Hospital, I stood on the other side of the veil, holding a lantern to guide souls on their final journey. I found comfort in the stillness, the quietude that whispered tales of lived experiences and unspoken secrets. The stainless steel table, the antiseptic smell hanging heavy in the air, the low hum of the cooling units. They were elements of my sanctuary, not symbols of dread. I saw myself as an artist, albeit of a macabre kind. My subjects, frozen in eternal sleep, required my careful attention to be presented for their final act, their ultimate audience, the grieving loved ones bidding them goodbye. Over the years, I've had many patients, each carrying their unique story engraved in the pallor of their skin, the stiffness of their limbs, and the silence of their hearts. Each one taught me something, a new perspective on life, an insight into the human condition, a subtle reminder of our mortality. The solace I found in this seemingly grim profession was my fortress against the bustling world outside, and I cherished it. One stormy night, however, this fortress was breached, and my sanctuary was violated. The feeling was strange, something I could only describe as a ripple in my stagnant pool of tranquility. It was as if the dark clouds outside were not just bearing rain, but a more profound, sinister harbinger. I remember it clearly. I was sitting in my office, sifting through paperwork, a mundane task that usually offered a mundane comfort. But that night, the silence was dense, heavy, like the calm before the storm, and the usual drone of the cooling unit seemed more like an ominous growl. The telephone broke this uneasy silence with a jarring ring that sent an unexpected chill down my spine. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Hammond, one of the senior ER doctors. He sounded strained, an emotion I'd rarely heard color his usually calm and controlled tone. "John," he said, the words hanging in the air, "we're bringing someone down. Someone different." Different was an unusual choice of words, especially coming from an ER doctor who had witnessed the entire spectrum of the human affliction. Intrigue weaved with unease as I anticipated the arrival of this different individual. The elevator's mechanical hum signaled the arrival of the body, an echo that bounced off the cold tiles and filled the stillness of the morgue. Despite the countless times I'd heard it before, that night it reverberated within me, stirring unease that pooled in the pit of my stomach. The elevator door slid open, revealing the somber faces of the two orderlies. Between them they bore a stretcher, weighed down by an ominously shrouded form. My eyes were instantly drawn to the body's dimensions. It was unnaturally tall, the length of that stretcher barely accommodating its stretched-out form. The blanket did little to mask the contours of its physique. It was slim but solid, almost imposing, even in its deathly stillness. The feet, oddly elongated and strangely misshapen, protruded from the blanket's end. They were unlike any I had seen before, a chilling variance in the otherwise routine monotony of death's diverse clientele. Despite the warmth of my office tucked away from the biting chill of the main morgue, an icy shiver ran its cold fingers down my spine. The air seemed to drop a few degrees, making the sterile white walls seem more haunting under the fluorescent lights. With a nod, I signaled the orderlies to place the body on the stainless steel table that occupied the room's center. It landed with a hushed thud, the cold metal surface echoing my heart's disquiet. I thanked the orderlies, their expressions visibly relieved as they escaped the room and the unusual aura that clung to our new guest. Alone now, I approached the table, the chilling anticipation prickling at my skin. The fluorescent lights cast a ghostly pallor on the cloth that covered the body. The air tasted different, thicker somehow, as if charged with a tangible trepidation. Drawing a steady breath, I reached out, my gloved hand pulling back the shroud with a calculated slowness. The face that revealed itself was as unusual as the rest of its physical characteristics. It was striking, its symmetry perfect to an unnerving degree. The skin unusually pale against the stark white cloth. The eyes, tightly shut, were set deep in the face, surrounded by heavy, almost sculpted brows. There were no signs of trauma, no indication of life's violent end, yet an unnatural stillness hung over the body. It was as if death itself was hesitant to fully claim this being. A chill coursed through me, stronger this time, causing an involuntary shudder that I quickly suppressed. I was a veteran of death, yet this stranger was awakening primal fears I thought long buried. Despite my growing dread, I felt the pull of intrigue and the duty of my role. My work demanded that I understand this anomaly, that I lay bare the secrets it held. Armed with my surgical tools and years of experience, I steeled myself to explore the mysteries hidden beneath the strange form. The world outside my morgue was asleep. The quiet of the early morning hours crept in, swallowed by the morgue's ever-present silence. I'd always found this quiet comforting, a calm harbor against the day's hustle. However, this time it felt uneasy, a wordless echo of the body laid out on my table. I pulled the overhead light closer, the sharp clinical glow illuminating the stranger's body with a harsh precision. I'd performed autopsies thousands of times before, but that night, my heart thudded with an unprecedented anticipation, a strange sense of trepidation. The scalpel felt cool, familiar in my gloved hand. It caught the sterile light as I began my careful examination, its glint seeming almost out of place against the icy pallor of the lifeless skin. Yet beneath my experienced hand, the body resisted, refusing to yield its secrets as readily as others had done. Its flesh was cold, colder than any I touched before, and unyielding, as though death had frozen it in time. The stranger's anatomy, while human-like in its construction, presented an uncanny perfection. Every organ was pristine, untouched by age or disease. The heart was robust, the liver was unscarred, the lungs were untarnished. Everything appeared to be in perfect working order, a paradoxical spectacle in the house of death. There was no discernible cause of death, no sign of any biological failure. Every step of the autopsy further deepened the mystery. The stranger's blood was dark and thick, like ink, and it lacked the usual metallic smell. When I peered under the microscope, the stranger's cells were unlike any human cells I'd seen before. They were beautifully symmetric, their structure more complex and intricate than expected. As hours melted away, my notes grew, filled with observations and questions that seemed to raise further questions. There were no signs of rigor mortis, a standard fixture in the post-mortem process. The body seemed to exist in a paradoxical state, trapped between life and death. With the break of dawn, I found myself staring at my notes, a string of unanswered questions glaring back at me. Exhaustion gnawed at me, yet a restless energy kept me anchored to the autopsy table. The stranger's lifeless form continued its vigil under the harsh light, its mystery still locked away, further fueling the strange dread that clung to the air. The world was starting to stir from its slumber, yet in the confines of my morgue, time seemed frozen, trapped in the icy grip of the stranger. As the reality of my findings, or lack thereof, started to sink in, The day turned to night again. The world continued its routine, oblivious to the alien enigma lying in the heart of St. Andrew's Hospital. I hadn't left the morgue since the arrival of the stranger. Time had ceased to exist in the face of my obsessive quest for answers, as though the stranger's anomaly had warped the reality around it. Every question I pursued, every detail I examined only deepened the mystery. Somewhere in my relentless pursuit of understanding, exhaustion set in. I had been resisting the body's siren call to rest, driven by a heady mixture of fear and fascination. But eventually, as the storm outside grew and the rhythm of rain against the window turned hypnotic, I succumbed to the weight of the sleepless hours. I settled in my office chair, my eyes never leaving the lifeless form on the autopsy table. Even in repose, the stranger was an imposing figure. The silence that had once been my ally now seemed to mock me, echoing the emptiness of my findings. I was caught somewhere between consciousness and sleep when the silence was shattered by a guttural groan. My eyes snapped open, my heart pounding as if echoing the unsettling sound. It was a low, muffled noise, almost inhuman. I rose from my chair, fear prickling at my skin as I stepped into the autopsy room. The overhead lamp threw a cruel light onto the stranger's body, and there it was again, a low, animalistic grunt that seemed to reverberate off the steel and tile. My breath hitched as my eyes caught the unmistakable rise and fall of the stranger's chest. The sight was chilling. You don't need to be a mortician to know dead people don't breathe. I approached the table, my mind racing to find a rational explanation for this impossible event. Post-mortem twitching, I told myself, a phenomenon I'd observed many times before. But as I reached the body, another groan tore through the silence. It was louder this time, a terrible, tortured sound that sent a chill down my spine. The body convulsed violently, shattering my reassurances. Suddenly, the lifeless eyes flicked open. They were an odd, iridescent color that shimmered under the harsh light, a stark contrast to their earlier dormant state. They bore into mine, cold yet brimming with an uncanny consciousness. Fear froze me in place as the corpse gasped, its chest heaving as it pulled in a grotesque mockery of a breath. A wave of cold dread washed over me, a feeling more profound than any I'd experienced in my years of work. My sanctuary had been violated, the world of the living irrevocably intruding on the realm of the dead. But as I met the stranger's gaze, I knew the truth was far more terrifying. The dead had intruded upon the living. The thing that was once a body now lay breathing before me. Its eyes, a hypnotic spiral of color, scanned the room with an eerie intelligence. An alien consciousness had erupted in the heart of my sanctuary, and I found myself teetering on the edge of madness and reality. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated by the rasping breaths of the stranger. I wanted to call for help, to break the suffocating stillness with the comfort of another human presence, but fear rooted me to the spot. The dread-filled seconds stretched out, morphing into a grotesque tableau of the impossible. It was the stranger who broke the silence. The voice was deep, ethereal, echoing in the confines of the room like a chilling breeze.
"John,"
it said, the syllables rolling off in a hushed whisper that belied the strangeness of the situation. The sound of my name coming from its mouth was a surreal experience. How did it know me? Panic gripped me tighter as I struggled to make sense of the unfolding nightmare. I gathered the remnants of my courage, my voice barely above a whisper as I asked, "Who are you?" It blinked slowly, the strange colors of its eyes shimmering under the overhead light. The room seemed to darken, the single overhead lamp appearing like a spotlight in the vastness of my fear.
"We are you."
it responded, its voice reverberating against the sterile walls of the morgue. The words sent a cold chill down my spine. What did it mean? Was I hallucinating from sleep deprivation? A terrible realization began to dawn on me as the entity continued to explain.
We are the amalgamation of your fears, your loneliness, your isolation. We are born from the dread you've isolated yourself in for years.
It said, its voice hauntingly calm.
You have stayed among the dead for so long you brought us to life.
A numb horror washed over me as its words sank in. Was this my creation? A manifestation of the darkness that my profession immersed me in? I stood, frozen in disbelief, as the entity unfolded its terrifying revelation. The thunderstorm that had been building up outside reached its crescendo, the flashes of lightning illuminating the horror that had turned my sanctuary into a living nightmare. I felt the world around me blur as I tried to comprehend the impossible reality. The implications were horrifying. Had I opened a portal between life and death somehow? While I grappled with the twisted reality, the entity continued to stare at me with its hauntingly human eyes. Its existence, a chilling confirmation of my unspoken fears, was a mirror reflecting my own dark obsessions. And as the truth slowly dawned upon me, I realized the most terrifying part was still to come. I stood rooted in my spot, my mind reeling from the revelation. "What do you want?" I managed to croak, my voice barely audible over the low hum of the cooling units and the sporadic thunder outside.
We are what you created, John.
It echoed, its voice a chilling lullaby in the terrifying silence.
We are here to stay, to exist, to be a part of the world you've shuttered yourself in.
It was an embodiment of my darkest fears, my deepest dread given form and consciousness, a nexus born out of my isolation and obsession. I don't understand, I stammered, my mind struggling to grapple with the chilling reality.
Your unending obsession with death, your fascination with my domain has given us life,
the entity explained, its voice a hushed whisper against the storm raging outside. As I grappled with the horrific implications, it continued to breathe, its chest rising and falling in a grotesque mockery of life. My creation, my curse, was here to stay. There was no escape from this nightmare, no waking up to find it gone. I was trapped, ensnared in the chilling reality of what my years amidst the dead had wrought. I had stared into the abyss of death, and in return, it had stared back, giving life to my deepest, darkest fears. The existence of this creature symbolized that the dead had crossed over into the world of the living. The walls of the morgue seemed to close in, the cold tiles echoing the chill in my heart. As the stranger, the embodiment of my dread, lay breathing on the table, I understood the terrifying irony of my situation. I, who had spent my life preparing the dead for their final journey, had instead ushered a horror into the world of the living. And thus I remain, trapped in my unending nightmare, the architect of my own terror. Death is no longer a final frontier, a quiet end. It is a living, breathing entity, a constant companion in my ghastly existence. My sanctuary has been corrupted, my peace shattered, and I'm left to exist in this limbo, caught between the world of the living and the dead, a prisoner of my own creation. I once made a career out of guiding the departed. Now I am host to an impossible entity. Life and death are no longer separate realms. and I am the living testament to their horrifying union.